Good evening and welcome to the City of East Providence City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, March 5th. May we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Sergeant Norton, you mind leading us to the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Mr. President, before we get started, I'd just like to move to seal the minutes from executive session.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilman Cahoon to seal the minutes from the executive session. Seconded by Councilwoman Souza. Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Next item, please.
Approval of the consent calendar.
Mr. President, so move approval.
We have a motion to approve the consent calendar. Would anyone like to second that motion?
Second.
We have a second by Councilwoman Souza. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye.
Licenses not requiring public hearing. Application for victualling license Class 3. It's a transfer. This is Ivana LLC, doing business as Sunny's Convenience, 548 Willett Avenue, 02915. They are also applying for the holiday sales license.
Is the applicant here? Please step up to the podium. Right up here, please. Thank you.
I have to speak something.
No? Does anyone have any questions or concerns for the applicant?
Just turn it off.
Mr. President, I just have for the clerk, are we all clear? Everything's
Yes,
clear?
everything's clear. They've gone through all the vetting process. Everything is good.
Okay. No further questions? With that being said, we have a roll call vote, unless you have something that you'd like to discuss or talk with us at this point in time?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay.
So I
All right.
attend the meeting. Thank
Sure.
you. Thank you, everyone.
Mr. President, I move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Councilman Cahoon, would anyone like to second that motion?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councilman Morado. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye. Next item, please. Thank you. You're all set.
Licenses requiring public hearing. Potsy's Place. 380 Taunton Avenue, 02914.
Good evening.
Good evening. Does anyone here have any questions regarding the license? Is everything in order, Madam Clerk?
So, yes, everything is in order. This is, Potsy's Place is requesting a liquor license for just wine and beer.
Yes.
They have previously had a liquor license in which there were no previous issues. Everything is good.
I make a motion to approve. I'm sorry.
Any member for the public?
Public hearing. This is a public hearing. Would anyone have any questions or concerns regarding this license? Anyone have any questions or concerns regarding this license? With that being said, the public hearing is closed. We may proceed with a vote at this point in time. We have a motion on the floor to approve by Councilwoman Souza
Mr. President, I would second that.
and seconded by Councilman Rodrick. Madam Clerk, may we have a roll call vote?
Yes. Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Next item.
Communications, Mayor Communications, His Honor, Mayor Bob DeSilva, letter, Nicholas Williams, 47 Lottie Drive, 02915, for the East Providence Housing Authority. It's a letter of appointment. By His Honor, no vote is needed by the council.
So This letter was addressed on February 26. Says, "Dear Council President Brito, I hereby appoint Nicholas Williams to the East Providence Housing Authority on this day, Tuesday, March 5th, 2019. Mr. Williams resides at 47 Lottie Drive, Riverside, Rhode Island, 02915 and 14. This appointment is in accordance with the Rhode Island General Law 45-25-10. Sincerely, Mayor Bob De Silva." So again, as the clerk had indicated, the mayor, this is an appointed position by the mayor, therefore it does not require a vote. However, he did want to bring this to our attention, so we're fully aware of his appointment. Anyone have any questions?
Done.
With that being said, Mayor, next item, please.
Mr. President, can I just make a motion to admit the letter to the record?
Okay, so we have a motion to admit the letter into records by Councilwoman Souza. Would anyone like to second that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Cahoon. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Thank you. Next item, please.
Carousel Commission fundraiser, Stephen Costa. Or Tracy.
I apologize. Stephen Costa was not able to make it this evening, so you get me instead. We just wanted to let you know about an upcoming fundraiser we're having. On March 23rd at the Bright Ridge Club, we're holding a pasta dinner to benefit the Depot Project. I did bring a little flyer with some info. The event is going to be from 6 to 8. It'll be pasta, meatball, salad, and a good time for families and friends to get together and come out and support a great cause. Tickets are available online or in the office, which is located at the Senior Center in East Providence. Also, all commission members have them as well. If you go on our website, you'll also see that all of the 2019 events are planned and posted for the year.
Any questions from the council? Madam Clerk, if I may ask if we just post this up in the, if we can post this in the lobby?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Tracy,
you.
just one question, if I may.
Thank you.
Just, Tracy, are you okay if we take a picture of this, share it, Facebook, all that?
Oh, please do.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Next item is Neighborhood Pride, snow removal and sidewalk pedestrian safety. Frederica Afra, I believe she's not present tonight.
Frederica here this
No,
evening?
I spoke
No?
with Frederica. She is going to be placed on next council meeting's docket.
Okay. Next item, please.
East Providence School Committee resolution. School Committee also attached to the docket. You see the resolution.
So the resolution, as signed by the school committee, doesn't really have any requested action on behalf of the city. Accordingly, I think that probably, we're not voting on it tonight, we don't have any action. If the school committee is going to ask us to take an action or to endorse their position to the state, in which case they are trying to assert or asserting that they should have 4-year terms on the school committee going forward. I mean, that would give us an opportunity to discuss that, what our thoughts might be, et cetera, et cetera. But at present, the resolution that they currently worked up doesn't ask us to do anything. So, I'm recommending that we let them take another crack at that if that's in fact what they want to do. And, that's really all there is to be said about this, unless anybody has any questions. I think you all saw the resolution.
If I may, will that be on a later date up for a council vote?
I guess it depends what they do, what they choose to do. To my understanding, they have to, if they want 4-year terms for the school committee, that's a change that needs to be made in Title 16 state law. So that has to be decided on by the General Assembly. We don't decide on that. But if they want, the city council to endorse that particular position, they're going to have to put a resolution together that.
If I'm not mistaken on the resolution, I thought we would have to vote on the resolution. And then it's sent up.
That could very well be.
Sent up to the General
It
Assembly.
could very well
from
be
there.
that we would have to vote on
From
any
that.
such resolution. Mike?
If I may, so the communication from the school committee basically is their sense that they would like, I believe, a 4-year term. This flows out of the issue that we had before with the council term, and basically at the Rhode Island Board of Elections, they indicated, I'm going to read from the decision, the board further rules that the seats for the school committee will be subject to an election to be held in 2018, and that the terms of office will be 2 years until and unless the General Assembly ratifies the charter amendments pertaining to the school committee, including the term of office. The board concurs with the canvassing authority that the provisions of question 11 dealing with school committee members must be ratified by the General Assembly before becoming effective. The circumstances surrounding the school committee are different. Municipalities have no inherent power to legislate on matters of statewide concern or upon matters that are specifically reserved to the General Assembly by our state constitution under Rhode Island law. Matters pertaining to education are of statewide concern. This includes responsibility for the creation and organization of all school committees whose powers and duties are defined under Rhode Island General Laws 16.2-1. When the city seeks to amend its charter to change something which relates to the area of state responsibility, the charter amendment must be ratified by the General Assembly. Thus, the provisions of the amendment relating to school committee cannot have legal effect without ratification by the General Assembly, and elections must continue to be held every 2 years, including this year. So basically, in order to get to the school committee to a 4-year term, this council would have to pass a resolution asking the General Assembly to ratify the charter amendments that were approved by the voters back in 2014?
12.
Oh, I'm sorry. And then that would begin that process. So there really is no other action the school committee can take. This is really left for the city council to decide whether they want the General Assembly to ratify what the voters did approve, which was a 4-year term for city councils. The issue from a legal perspective is this. When the ballot question was put on the for approval with voters, both the city council and the school committee had 4-year terms to run concurrently. So so that's what the question said. Shall the city council and the school committee have 4-year terms? And that was approved by the voters. The issue with the school committee, the issue with the city council did not have to be ratified by the General Assembly according to the Board of Elections decision. So if we were to have a resolution now asking for that ratification, it would be my recommendation that in order to reflect the intent of the voters, that the 4-year term would not become effective until the election of 2022, when your term ends, because that keeps it in line with the 4-year term for the city council and the school committee as they was originally passed. So that's just my recommendation. You can do whatever you want. But the ball is now in your court. You could do nothing and we'll continue to have 2-year terms. But the General Assembly will not ratify the charter amendment without a resolution of the city council.
Or consider it.
Or even consider it, correct. Sorry.
Who makes that determination for the, is it up to us, the
That's
council?
you. The city council determines, yep.
And the Board of Elections already ruled on that?
I just read you that part of the decision. They said now it's up to you to decide whether or not the General Assembly will ratify it. So that's where we are on that issue.
But we don't have this item for action tonight.
We do not. So this was done under communication because the resolution was just giving you a sense of what the school committee desires.
Yep.
That's all they can do. Legally, you're the only ones who can ask for the charter amendment to be ratified by the General Assembly. The school committee could not do that.
Okay.
So what makes this situation different from the last one with the council is that essentially the voters voted for a 4-year term based on the concurrence with the city council,
Correct.
even though the ballot said 2 years, correct?
I don't know what the ballot said in the last election ballot. I think it did say 2 years.
2 years.
Yes. So that's what I'm saying. So when the voters passed the charter amendment, it was clear that they intended, from my opinion, that they wanted the council and the school committee to have 4-year terms, but they all wanted the 4-year terms to start at the same time. So if we were to ratify this now, you wouldn't, to align the terms, you'd have to wait till 2022. So my recommendation, if the council wants to go that direction, is to have the General Assembly ratify the charter amendments, but make the charter amendment effective for the election of 2022. And that will align your term, the mayor's term, and the school committee term with 4-year terms. And the only reason why you need General Assembly approval for the school committee, as the Board of Elections stated, because it's education, and education needs to be ratified by the General Assembly.
So, but which also leaves the opportunity for everybody in the city to get booted out on the same day.
Correct.
Right.
But that's what, and
That charter lacked vision. That charter amendment probably should have been structured differently, but I certainly agree with, your read on it. That seems to make sense. That's what the voters voted on.
that's what they were asked to vote on, and that's what they approved.
And the charter currently says 2-year terms.
For school committee.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, because it was not, because even though the change was voted upon, it was never ratified by the General Assembly. For education.
Mr. President, so to be clear, I think you said it a few times, Mike, the voters in 2012 chose that city council and school committee would both have 4-year terms.
Yeah, so the question on the ballot was this: shall the charter for the city of East Providence be amended to establish 4-year terms for members of the council and members of the school committee? That was the question on November 6, 2012. And that was approved. So it was clear that the city of East Providence should be amended to establish 4-year terms for members of the council and members of the school committee, 4-year terms. That was approved.
But the word concurrent didn't go into play. It just said 4-year terms for both.
But it was approved at the same time, so
Right.
that's what
Right.
makes it concurrent.
Right. But because it had to get approved, it's not. So currently, it doesn't
Correct.
have to run concurrent with the
Correct.
city council.
Correct. My reading,
Recommendation would be that it would to align with the charter.
only because that's what I believe the voters voted upon, and that's what the intent of the language said, 4-year terms upon approval, and that's what they voted on.
So I'll offer this to the council as the liaison to the school committee. Why don't I go back to the school committee, present to them what we talked about, see what they're thinking they want to do, and then if any resolution falls out of that from the city, perhaps I'll ultimately be the one to, introduce it for your consideration. Does that sound okay?
So in their resolution, they had suggested that it start in 2020, their next election, did they not?
I believe so.
That was their recommendation?
It did.
Okay.
But they can only make that recommendation. That's
Sure.
that's your decision as the city
Right,
council.
understood.
And really, it's really the General Assembly who will
No, at the end
ultimately
of the day,
decide.
sure,
Right?
yeah. Okay.
That's why I'm just trying to be clear, because we had that issue with the council part of it. But I think this is a little bit different because essentially the voters voted for a concurrent term with the council term. I just want to be clear on that, that's all.
Yep, I think that's
Because
fair.
the whole argument was, do they start, as we know, do they start after the 2-year term is over, like as we did with this council? And it doesn't seem that way, correct? Mike?
I'm sorry, I don't understand
It
your
doesn't
question.
seem that way where we don't have the same issues basically that we did with the council.
We don't have the same issue in the council because the council did not need General Assembly ratification, according to the Board of Elections.
Well, that's why I was just asking that, to be clear.
And by the way, the Board of Elections, the school committee had a right to intervene in this case. They didn't. They didn't seek the 4-year terms. They didn't push the issue as the city council did. So that's why the fallback position was you keep it to 2 years until you get it ratified by the General Assembly.
Thank you,
It
Mr.
is an
Sisler.
issue that needs to be clarified, however.
Thank you. Any other further discussion on this? Okay, so you'll go report to the school committee
I shall.
and get some clarification. Okay, very good. That concludes communication. Next item, please.
Public comment. Richard I can't say the last name. Thank you. Oh, sorry, I'm not Portuguese. 24-hour ordinance.
Madam Clerk, in East Providence, Quello is Quello.
Okay, I'm sorry. I will never forget that ever again.
Hi. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I think you guys are going to be discussing an ordinance to allow businesses, particularly laundromats, to be open 24 hours. Is that correct, towards the end of this evening?
Yes.
Not just laundromats, but any
Businesses.
Any business.
Yeah. So I'm a local business owner. I own City Bubbles Laundry. I've owned it for 5 years. I'd like to voice my opinion against allowing them to open 24 hours. Over the 5 years, during such time, I've never seen the business need to stay open past 9 p.m. at night. Prior to that, this location's been here for 50-plus years, and we've never been open past 9 p.m. at night. I don't have customers asking me to stay open till 10 p.m., never mind 24 hours. I don't see the business need, and more importantly, I think this would put my customers at risk. It would simply create the wrong type of opportunity for bad things to happen. Excuse me. It only takes one time. There is simply no business need for customers or general maintenance in general. There's a lot of machines there. If you need to work on machines, you put one machine down, you work on it. So I know in past meetings that I've seen some of their statements that they want to work on their machines overnight. Telling you from a business owner for 5 years of a laundromat, that's simply not true. This will only create the opportunity to keep our police officers busy. I personally would not let a corporate-run company from New York to come into my city and allow them to bend or change the rules. The fabric and safety of our city are more important than corporate profits. That's it. That's pretty much all I have to say. Any questions?
Public comment? No, there'll be a discussion on this when we start getting into the ordinance piece.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, please.
Gianna Perdikakis, 24-hour ordinance.
Is Ms. Gianna here? Ms. Gianna? Next.
That's all we have for public comment.
Okay. Very good. All right, so that concludes public comment. Right on to the next appointments, please.
Next is appointments. Mary Dwyer, 55 Spring Street, 02915, Conservation Commission, mayoral appointment. This was actually, this was actually recommended by Councilman Morato.
So,
Okay.
I would like to, I did speak with Mary Dwyer, and I discussed why she would like to go on the Conservation Committee, and I think she'd be a good fit. However, in keeping with our current ordinance on appointments, and with the 10-day posting of that resume and, whatever the requirements and the application process, I would like to table this and have her complete those steps first.
Okay.
So we can be accurate in following the current ordinance.
So in the interim, has she submitted her application to the clerk's office, just for the record?
Well, currently, previously, an application did not exist for anyone to fill out. Since that time, I have created an application, and that's available. It's a very simple application, which is just name, address, board or commission of interest, and the reasons why you'd like to join. And we can go ahead and redact the address and just have that for council use. So that is available. We can go ahead and I'd be more than happy to make sure that she gets that. So
Is that available online?
it's not available online yet. I just made it probably last week, but we can get it online. We can definitely get it online. That would be great. And that's working with IT and a few other people here at City Hall just to make sure that they can do that. And it would get sent directly to my email address. And then I can disperse it to the council or the mayors as needed.
In the interim, would you email it to us?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So again, keeping with the ordinance, I'm going to table that for now.
All right. So, Councilman, it says mayoral appointment. Is that a mayoral appointment or a council, city council appointment?
Actually, Madam Clerk, if you can answer that, because we've gone back and forth with this, and I was told that it was, council appointment. So maybe the solicitor can speak of that.
I believe the Conservation Committee is a mayoral appointment.
Okay.
Yes, that is correct. When talking with His Honor the Mayor, I did mention this appointment to him, and he did say that he was in agreement with Councilman Morato with this suggestion, and that's why it's where it is right now.
Oh, okay. So we could just proceed to have the 10-day.
Yeah, absolutely. We could do that. Considering it's a city board and commission, we want to do everything that we can to stay in alignment with that ordinance, and we can go ahead and.
So this should be good for the next council meeting.
10 days, yeah.
So it can automatically,
Well, depending on
you can
when-
automatically put it on the for the next council meeting then?
Sure, yeah,
So there's no
depending when we
delay.
get the application back, as long as we get it within
Oh, okay.
a select amount of time. It's a very easy application.
Yeah.
It's very easy.
Okay, very good. Next appointment, please.
Beverly LaForte, 45 Bright Ridge Avenue, 02914, Carousel Commission, Council President Brito.
Beverly had requested to be placed back onto the Carousel Commission. She's currently a member. Her membership had expired and asked me whether or not I'd be interested in putting her on, so I put her on. If anyone has any questions, please ask at this time.
Mr. President, I think the Carousel Commission, like a lot of commissions in the city, there's a lot of great volunteer work, and if we have a member who has been on that commission and has, I assume, been in good standing, we don't have any information otherwise, I don't think we want to be in a position to turn away citizen volunteers, so I would move approval of that appointment.
So we have a motion on the floor to approve. Anyone like to second that motion?
I'll second that motion.
We have a second by Councilwoman Souza. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Next item, please.
The next is another appointment, Pamela Sunday, 45 Legion Way, 02915, Traffic Control, Council Vice President Rodrick.
Mr. President, Mr. Solicitor, I don't know if this also now comes under, I know there was a policy adopted previously about people applying, and Pamela Sunday had contacted me. She's a teacher in our school department, teacher in good standing, and expressed an interest in this kind of work for the summer, working with police and traffic control. And I told her I would certainly support her interest in that. However, I don't know if this comes under the ordinance whereby she would have to fill out an application and others would have to have the opportunity to apply also.
So I know that you spoke to the mayor about this appointment as well, and the mayor tasked me with looking up the authority for the traffic control person or position within the city, and I cannot find any. There's no ordinance that indicates what a traffic control person does, what they get paid, what their duties are, and how they were appointed. I assume they were appointed under the old form of government when the city council was pretty much the executive and the legislative body. This is another one of those where I really don't have a great answer for you, because I think this was probably done more by tradition than by ordinance. So I would ask, if it's okay with you, certainly that I given a little bit more time and to research this a little bit more and maybe put together an ordinance. I would say just on first blush that traffic control would be an executive function that comes out of the police department. So my hunch would be that if we're going to have an appointment, that maybe it would be a mayoral appointment, maybe confirmation by the city council, whatever. But it could be anything that you so choose. But right now, there's nothing in the books about how this position came about, where it is, and how they get appointed and how they get paid, other than tradition and past practice.
So going forward then, do we go according to what we've done in the past? Because there is nothing in effect at this point in time that prevents us from having otherwise.
Well, you could look at it that way, but I also look at it this: you now have a chief executive of the city, where you didn't have one before, and under the charter, most appointments now come from the chief executive. Sometimes they're council approved, sometimes they're not. So I just feel uncomfortable saying go ahead and do this the way you've always done it, because you now have a new form of government. I'd feel a lot more comfortable if we had an ordinance that said, it's appointed by the city council, because then the ordinance remained, with the government change, because the ordinance is the ordinance that says it. But we don't even have an ordinance that says.
Is there a resolution?
I haven't found one.
Mr. President, I think, bears some looking into. I disagree in one regard, that we didn't have a chief executive before. We did, but he or she was called city manager. So they were the chief executive, and they hired. City council didn't hire. They might have affirmed some appointments. So I agree, however, that what you're saying is true. If nothing exists, we need to get something in writing, and if I'd be willing to I'm sure the mayor would support a person like Ms. Sunday if you know,
Yeah.
she's...
I don't believe it's a question of...
It's not a question,
It's just a
right.
question of getting the line straight, that's all.
I would just suggest, too, that maybe the acting police chief be involved in an opinion, because this is police work,
Bless you.
and there should be an opinion from the acting police chief on, I mean, they're going to work under police supervision, I would assume, and scheduling, and so I say let's hold off, and if you could report back to us if that's okay with the president and the rest of the council for
So-
the next meeting.
Yeah, so can we have a report by the next
Absolutely,
meeting
yes.
so council members can know whether or
Yes.
not if they can proceed at this point in time?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Can we just let it go like that, or do you need a motion to table?
I would just table it.
Okay, so moved. Well, it's just tabled anyway without a vote. That's fine. All set.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes appointments. Madam Clerk, I want to move right on to city council members.
Yes. Boards and commissions, Waterfront Commission, Section 2, Article 3, Revised Ordinances, City of East Providence, Councilman Cahoon.
So what we agreed to do at the last meeting was kind of take on these boards and commissions one at a time, try to figure out if we can make some sense out of the current rosters and, what vacancies there are, who is to make an appointment to fill those vacancies, the terms of the appointments, et cetera, et cetera. So to that end, I actually fired off a whole bunch of questions to the clerk. And I know that she was digging around, and I know that the solicitor was also digging around and sent some information to us. So I'm hoping that we can start the conversation there and hopefully get to my goal for this conversation. I don't know what the council's goal as a whole is, but my goal is to be able to figure out come next meeting if we actually want to make an appointment. If one of us has a vacancy against which to make an appointment, we could then go ahead and do that based on having straightened all of this stuff out. So I think, the first question that I asked, and certainly, I don't mean to take over the meeting, anybody, please, but the first question that I had asked was, who are the current active members of the Waterfront Commission, and what are the terms of their appointments?
The current members, we'll start with Chairman William Fazioli. As of right now, the vice chair does show vacant. You wanted term expirations as well, right, Councilman?
Yeah, if you've got them, that'd be
Sure,
great.
absolutely. So for William Fazioli, the chair, that is appointed joint by the city governor. His appointed date was June 6, 2018. His calculated end date is March 31st, 2022.
Okay.
The next is, so the vice chairman position is vacant currently, so it looks like there may be an opportunity there. Next is treasurer Stephen Hardcastle. And for Stephen Hardcastle, I'm actually looking, and I don't show Stephen Hardcastle in mind. So that was one thing that we were working on when I was working with Pam Sherrill, who's the executive director of the Waterfront Commission. There was a lot of disconnects in information, and not being a negative thing, it's just there was some disconnects that we need to update, obviously, to update our boards and commissions, which is a great conversation for us to have. So there is Stephen Hardcastle. I don't see what his term date or when he was appointed. I don't have that information according to my records. Next is Secretary Paul Mora. Paul Mora is an appointment of the City Council. He was appointed on March 5th, 2016. His calculated end date is March 14th, 2020. There are also, more so for the City Council, there is somebody for, it's currently showing that Ward 4 has Jay Kern. Jay Kern no longer, originally he was a part of the commission because he was an owner of a business, which was Lucky's at the time. Since that time, he sold his business, so he doesn't have, and he lives in Rehoboth. So that being said, it would disqualify him under the conditions of having to be a part of the Waterfront Commission. Because this is a council appointment where Jay Kern is right now, that would, his appointment is up on, he was appointed on April 7th, 2015. His calculated end date is April 6th, 2019, so next month. But as of right now, the conditions are you have to be either a resident or somebody that has business in East Providence, in which he doesn't have any anymore. So that would be a Ward 4 opening up. Ward 2 and Ward 3 currently do not have anybody. So that is, it looks like that's another opportunity, and that is a city council appointed position. Yes.
Excuse me, Madam Clerk, if the appointments by the city council, that appointed person has to reside or have a business in the city of East Providence. However, because there's appointments by the governor as well, they don't have to reside in the city of East Providence. Okay.
Yeah, right. So there's with the Waterfront Commission, it's a little bit of a different commission because it goes off of the Rhode Island general laws and not necessarily a city board commission, so it doesn't follow the ordinance per se. Am I right in saying that? So Ward, as of right now, depending on what the council pleases to do with the appointment with Jay Kern currently, there could possibly be Ward 2, Ward 3, and Ward 4 as an opportunity. So there's that.
Could I just add to that? So because this is controlled by state law, it really is a state commission, but you have appointing authority to that state commission, which is a little odd, but I can understand why, because it's your river and it's your waterfront. The council has a tradition of appointing one person from each ward, and you can certainly continue to do that, but there's no requirement that the 5 members from East Providence be from each of the 5 wards within the city. And basically, the statute says in my outline to you, there shall be 5 members appointed by the East Providence City Council who shall serve 4-year terms staggered, who shall be electors, who either be electors or property owners of the city or persons engaged in business of the city. So there is no requirement that each person come from a certain ward. But if you wanted to do that as a matter of courtesy to the other member councils or whatever, that's your choice. But
so let me restate that. There's no requirement for me being the Ward 3 councilman, there's no requirement for me to appoint a Ward 3 resident or business holder.
Right. Correct. All appointments, no matter where they come from, would have to be approved by the entire council. The individual council person doesn't have the appointing authority. It's the council as a elective body who has the appointing authority.
Okay.
Mr. President, could I ask the clerk, could we get Chairman Fazioli to send us through you or through the president an updated list? I know you had some missing information. So maybe Bill Fazioli could send us the finite current list of members and openings, clear openings.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. There's, I have the 2018 organization chart that was given to me by Mrs. Sherrill. But yeah, I think seeing that with the terms
Unless you
and
think
everything,
that's sufficient, that's current.
I think it is current. The only thing is that we don't have the term dates. So if we could get those updated, that would be helpful in projecting what the need is. Also, in addition, there's commissioners. So the commissioners, I believe in Solicitor Marcello, help me if I'm wrong here, but that looks like they are appointed by governor, which is...
She has 5 appointments.
She has 5 appointments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So we have, as commissioners, Timothy Conley, Roy, is it Columbi, Jay Kern, David Sluter, Louis Gerardo, and Peter Willey. Now, when I look at their term dates, Timothy Conley was appointed, and this is a governor appointment, so June 6, 2018, and it shows that it expires March 30th, 2022. And for Roy Columbi, he was appointed June 16th, 2016. His calculated end date is March 30th, 2020. Jay Kern, again, this is a city council spot. So he was appointed on 4/7/2015. I had mentioned that earlier. His end date is next month, April 6, 2019. And that's the information that I have.
So then so Mr. Kern? is
Yes.
it?
Mhm.
So Mr. Kern, having been a commissioner, was presumably appointed by the governor?
No, I apologize. No, Jay Kern was appointed by the city council. He's just listed as a commissioner.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Do we know what ward council person appointed?
The only thing that I saw in the records is that he was appointed by Tommy Rose.
Ward 3.
That's what it said, yeah, that's when it showed who it was. So that's what I saw in the, when I was doing a little digging. So there's also there's also some ex officio members, and that includes, well, before, it shows that the mayor is one of the members. There's also Malcolm Moore, who is our finance director. We have Diane Feather, who is our acting planning director. We have Stephen Kutu, who is our DPW director. And let's see, let me just make sure I'm not forgetting anybody. There should be a director or representative for the Rhode Island Department of Transportation. That's listed as ex officio. Assistant Director or Representative, Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management. It doesn't have a specific name, that's why I'm just saying the titles. And then Director or Representative for the Rhode Island Commerce Corporation, and there's not a name, but those are all ex officio members. There's hearing panel members, which is Stephen Hardcastle, William Fazioli, Peter Willey, Paul Mora, Jay Kern, and then, of course, the Executive Director, Pamela Sherrill.
Mr. President, I would thank Mr. Cahoon for his interest in this and agree that this is a critical area that we should not let get by us. The East Providence waterfront is finally getting some attention after, who knows, maybe 100 years of, we're finally realizing we have some potential. It has not been without controversy. In the past, the board did not have a chair, as I recall, or the governor, for whatever reason, held off on appointing a chair. Mr. Fazioli was doing a lot on his own and was maybe vice chair and was acting chair, and for whatever reason, the governor held off on that appointment for a few years. And, that hurt us. And Mr. Fazioli is a person of vast resources in a lot of areas and is critical to this commission. Now I'm glad that he is the chair, so we might have some openings, we might have some timelines that are about to expire, so it's very timely to get on top of this now with everything that's going on at that waterfront area.
If I may, and I concur with everything that you said, Mr. Rodrigues, if I can add one request, if we're going to ask Mr. Fazioli for his understanding of the current active members, may we also ask him if there are any particular skill sets he's looking for on the commission? For example, if he needs folks that are, adept at finance or, municipal bonding or, law or whatever it might be. I mean, I realize that we're asking folks to do this on a volunteer basis, but, at very least, if we're going to appoint somebody, I would be interested in giving him the people that, he thinks as the chair he needs to pull it off.
Sure. There, actually, a little bit of feedback for that. When I did, and they have Pam Sherrill and the Waterfront Commission, they've been spectacular to work with, very wonderful people. One thing that was mentioned was the need to, when I was talking with Pam Sherrill this afternoon, she was mentioning the need to diversify the group, especially with female representation. That was one thing that she said would be really great to have on the Waterfront Commission, and just wanted to pass that information along. So.
It doesn't, did you even mention any female members in here? It doesn't look like.
No, there are none.
Ex officio.
The only female members are ex officio. There are no voting female members.
Diane Feather.
Okay. And females make up approximately one half of East Providence, right? Last I checked. Yeah, okay.
Half of your home, I
Yeah,
believe.
yeah, half of my home as well.
Yeah.
Any other further questions or discussion on this matter? Otherwise, we're going to move right along to the next item, please. Next item, Madam Clerk, when you're available.
I just have to find my, all my paperwork. Oh, here we go. It's right here, sorry. Okay, East Providence lockbox update and discussion, Councilman Morato.
I just want to give a kind of like a little public service announcement, and if I may, Mr. President, if I can call up the Fire Chief Almazian,
Please. Chief?
in conjunction with Chief Almazian, who will give us a brief update on the lockbox program. I also have here the Rotary Club and Rotary Club President.
Chief.
No, we'll discuss that.
Good evening.
Evening.
How are you, Councilman? The Lockbox program is become very successful. We've installed approximately 27 of the boxes, and we've responded and have been able to utilize 10 of them. And how this works is that we've been lucky to have the lock boxes donated to the fire department, and we've made an agreement that our EMS coordinator would go on site and install the lock boxes for the residents. We then assist them in the location of the lock and device key, and we keep that on file. And this has been very, very successful in 10 times of responding to a residence where we don't have to use forcible entry. And it expedites the process of gaining entry, minimizing damage, and expediting care for that patient. From what I understand, the local 850 East Providence firefighters are going to be donating an additional number of lock boxes, and I've been notified by Mrs. Perry that the Rotary is going to be donating some lock boxes also. So it's been a very, very successful collaborative effort with all entities, and it's for the betterment of the city residents.
Councilman, I have a question for you or the chief. Who determines whether or not someone gets or qualifies for these lockbox?
I'll let the chief answer, since this is this program has gone throughout the state.
Oh, okay.
But
Could you repeat that question again?
Let him answer that.
Who determines who qualifies for a lockbox or not? Or what are the names?
We have the criteria that is on our website. If they need one, then they have a personal conversation with the EMS coordinator. This isn't something that we're just going to give out because someone thinks it may be convenient for them to have that. There is some criteria that, and I'm not quite sure it's something that we want to publicize right here. In a private conversation with our EMS coordinator,
Okay.
Can be discussed with Captain Potvin.
Thank you. Any other further questions regarding this, Councilman?
Good news.
No, I would agree. I just congratulate Councilman Morato, who has successfully pushed for this program, I know, in another community and statewide, and has brought it here to East Providence, and Chief Almazian, who warmly embraced it, and it's a great service to the public in general.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you. Also, if I could just call up Renati. She's the Lions Club East Providence Seekonk president, which I'm also a member of.
Step right up to the podium.
And they're going to donate some boxes to our fire
Chief,
department.
on behalf of the East Providence Seekonk Rotary Club, we'd like to submit this to you for
Thank you very much.
the East Providence for implementing the lockbox program.
Thank you very much. Anything we can do.
14 lock boxes there.
So there's 14 lockbox that you all donated to the cause? Oh, thank you. And that's from the Rotary Club, right? Okay.
Yes, and if you know of any, this is usually for the elderly or someone that's disabled. And if you know of anyone, please contact my office, and we'll get right out there, because we usually have the EMS coordinator out there within several days of notification.
Yeah, I just also want to mention, if anyone would like to donate some boxes, pay it forward, or any businesses or anyone would like to donate, they can just drop it off to the fire department headquarters on Broadway. Valerie, anything you want to add? Or?
Yes, if I may, Valerie Perry. I just wanted to once again thank Councilman Morado for mentioning this to the Rotary Club, because we got right on board with it, and because with the East Providence Seekonk Rotary, we contacted Seekonk. They're getting now lock boxes also. So we've donated 14. We donated $300, and we're hoping to have this as an ongoing thing each year, so we can donate more. And I also would like to mention that Councilman Morado and I we have a Rotary radio show, and we were on the radio Friday, and he did a very nice job of supporting this through the community. So hopefully the word will get out there, and people that are really in need will take advantage of the program.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Mrs. Perry, if I may, I'd just like to say thank you for, the East Providence and Seekonk Rotary for being such a great partner in the community and sponsoring the very best East Providence Central Little League minor league team last year. We went 11-8, but we'll do better.
All the members.
Councilman, any other further discussion on this matter?
Nothing further. I just want to thank the Rotary and Chief Almazian and the union for taking that on and implementing it for our citizens. So.
Well, thank you, Councilman. Next item, please.
160th anniversary of Rumford Baking Powder, the Greater Rumford Bake-Off. Sunday, May 12, 2019, 65 Hunts Mills Road. Council President Brito.
Thank you, City Clerk. Madam Clerk, excuse me. This was brought to my attention a couple of weeks ago, and I was asked to be the judge for this. This is an anniversary celebration, an anniversary of the 160th anniversary of the Rumford Baking Powder Company. And with that being said, the Historical Committee has decided that this year they're going to put on a bake-off. And it's for adults and for juniors, for kids as well. So I'm kind of premature right now by mentioning this because it's really early on. As you can see, according to the docket, it's not until May 12th, but I want to get the word out. So probably from this point on, I'll be just having it on a docket for the sake of, but not for conversation, in the sense that I just wanted to put it out there, and I told them I would help spread the word for them. And with that being said, if I'm not mistaken, on this day, it's Mother's Day. So, yeah. So with the entries will be the day of the event, May 12th. It's cash prize, and the winner will get a trophy as well. As to how much, I'm not exactly sure. How they go about baking, whether it's you bake it and then you bring it, I'm not exactly sure. But again, I just want to put the information out there, and as information flows into me, I'll be able to provide you with some questions that you may have to the answer. For now, I just want the public to be aware, and this is not only for Rumford residents, it's not only for the city of East Providence, but it's for anyone in the state. So if you know of anybody who's interested, who bakes very good, this is a good opportunity for them to show off how good they are as a baker. And hopefully this will be something that could continue on in the years to come as an annual event. So again, it's May 12th, Hunts Mills, right in Rumford. The judging starts at 11:30, and the winner will be announced at 1 p.m. Thank you.
No solicitation ordinance. Council President Brito.
This ordinance, by the way, is already on the books. It's Chapter 8, Section 123, 123. And I brought this up because I received a phone call last week regarding a solicitation from companies, whether it was a Verizon representative or Cox Communication representative. But we have companies that are going around in the neighborhood who are continuously knocking on doors. They're going to these homes after hours, later in the evenings. We don't know if it's companies and or scams. So I just want to put this out. There is an ordinance that before 8 a.m., no one is allowed to be soliciting anyone at their doorstep. And I think the other time here we have is just before dusk, actually. So again, I received a call and I spoke to a woman regarding a representative who came to her house, two of them, by the way. They banged on the front door. As one stood at the front door, the other proceeded to go to the back of the house, knock on the back door. In addition to knocking on the back door, they knocked on the window as well. Finally, the woman answered the door. Of course, she was a little bit upset because they were persistent. As they explained that they're installing wires. There might be some complications with reception in the house there. She was told, I have no problems with reception. They were very persistent. And I just want to make this aware of people, especially those who are elderly, that after a certain time, just don't open the door, number one. But more importantly, if somebody's coming to your door and you don't feel comfortable, call the police. Just call the police, because there is a solicitation ordinance in the city of East Providence that prevents these things from happening. And a lot of people aren't aware of it. So, again, I just wanted to put it out there to the public that in an event that this happens to you, report it to the police department. This woman was shaken by what had happened to her. It was an unfortunate event. They were extremely aggressive. And for someone to literally to go to the back door and to knock on the windows as well, I mean, that raises a red flag, whether it's a representative from an organization or whatever it may be. No one should be doing that. So again, it's something I just want to put out there and let the public know that in an event that this happens to you, don't ask questions, don't answer your door, just call the police. Thank you.
Mr. President, can I add to that a little bit?
Yes, please.
I have to look at the ordinance, but that's a problem that occurs in many other communities. I know one in East Bay, that's a problem that we also have. But the way we're addressing that, and I think it may be a good idea for a conversation and maybe a look at our ordinance, would be to perhaps have them check in with the police department, okay, prior to going out and soliciting. So, and that what would do is the police department would actually vet these people out. And we went a step further where we issue a temporary badge, not a police badge, like a little identification, basically stating that the police department, vetted them out and they are currently okay to solicit, basically. So that when the police department does go out and ID someone that is suspicious based on a situation that you just gave, they've been already properly vetted. Although that situation's completely different. It seems like there was some criminal intent with that one. But I'm just talking about the average person, the company that's knocking on doors to sell replacement windows and so on and so forth. And I haven't really read the ordinance yet in depth. I do see it here. But it does seem like there is some room for improvement in having a company properly fill out an application, properly get vetted, to be able to knock on doors. And because there's a lot of shady people out there, and that's a part of the reasons why, going back to lockbox, we don't put the box on the door itself, because we don't want to give that impression to some of these people soliciting that the home is vacant, So there may be some room for improvement and discussion to protect our citizens from, people with intentions of doing things other than soliciting. So
let me just read this real quick. It states here, Section 8-123, hours permitted. It shall be unlawful for any person engaged in soliciting, as described in Section 8-116, to call from house to house unless invited by the occupant to do so. So if you're not invited, actually you're uninvited to be going to anybody's house. The first thing I think of is during election season, also in canvassing. That's the first thing that comes to my mind, because you never know. At that time, at any time before the hours of 8 a.m. or 1/2 hour after sunset. So I don't think you can even go to the police department during those times. I mean, or make any arrangements according to this ordinance. You just can't go to the door-to-door during this time, if I read it correctly. And again, this is just something I want to put out there, because when this was described to me, about a year ago, somebody told me some representatives from a company did the same thing, and they've just become more and more aggressive. In the last council, there was actually this ordinance that was put into place because of how aggressive these representatives can be from company to company. So again, I just wanted to put it out there. In an event that it happens to anyone, please call the police. Thank you. Next item, please.
Update on contract finance advisor services for high school construction bond. Councilman Cahoon requests the presence of Finance Director Malcolm Moore.
Yeah, if I'd like, Mr. Moore, would you mind just stepping up to the podium? So for everybody's information, the contract being described here is an agreement that's been pending. The person that's going to be, or the firm that's going to be contracted by the city is going to be assisting the city with all the various aspects of the bond for the new high school construction, because this is a very important role, because this is something that we as a city don't typically do. I asked if Malcolm could come here and kind of give us an idea of how that's going to work, kind of the schedule going forward, et cetera, et cetera. So, Malcolm, if I could turn it over to you and get your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Councilman. A quick, brief history. We've had Hilltop Securities as our FA, our financial advisor, for many, many years. And when the mayor came in, he wanted to take a look. Since we hadn't gone out and looked at anybody in a while, what's out there? Are we still doing our due diligence? And there really are two companies out there that do this, PFM, represented by Mr. Fazioli, and Hilltop Securities. They pretty much cover the whole state. I've worked with both of them over the years. They're both very good. I think it's for the infrastructure bank, they really say there's, I think it's that or is it Ryback, that there are really two FAs you work with, and those are the two. They both have very good credentials. We've worked with, like I said, Hilltop for quite some time. We're actually meeting with the mayor tomorrow to go over sort of where we're at. The first thing we want to be able to do is the short-term borrowing, the bond anticipation notes. When we met last time with the school department on this, we were discussing mid-April. I sent the cash flows over to Hilltop today. We're hoping to get some updated ones before the meeting or at the meeting next week. And the cash flows are obviously very critical. Well, that tells you your cash needs. And then do we go out to for one band versus two, and then you get into the bond itself for $189.5 million. You have RIDE, which looks like it's $135 million. The question is, can we separate that piece and go out for $135 that is specifically for RIDE? You'd go through RIDE to get your reimbursement for, which leaves, say, $50 million rounded. Hilltop had spoke to the infrastructure bank, and they both spoke to RIDE, and they think that there is, above and beyond that 135, about $27 million of energy efficiencies that would qualify for the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank, used to be Clean Water. And if you can run it through that program, you get a subsidized interest rate. What they calculated is, if they were correct and you could run 27 through, you could save another $4 million in interest. So that's a pretty big number.
Yeah, that's a big number.
So there's a lot of variables. It depends on what RIDE does. Could we run it all through RIDEBACK and maybe get it subsidized? So you may end up with 1, 2, or 3 bonds. It's just a matter of, we're kind of waiting, almost like we're waiting for the reimbursement. Is it going to be 70? Is it the 20% on the 53 that is now, or the 54.5? But I know in speaking with the mayor earlier today, he addressed some concerns with me because he wants to make sure that we're on top of this so that we aren't, he and I, or mainly me, is the one holding up the financing. Because the one thing you don't want to do is have the construction stop because they're not getting paid. And in my TANs and cash flow, I had figured in a couple more payments till we get to the mid-April or say May bans. And that's kind of an overview as it stands at the moment.
That's exactly what I was looking for. And, for the council's information, knowing that this is a big project, knowing that all of our eyes are on it, this is a huge step, being able to get this done, being able to get Hilltop locked in and started. Because, it's one thing to vote for a bond, and I'm very excited that the city voted for the bond, but actually implementing it and figuring out, disbursements and how we're going to finance that, that's a huge, huge job, and we need help. So.
And just to continue on, at the last council meeting, you had approved the payment for the November, December, January bills. Craig Gianos, their finance director, came down Wednesday morning after it was approved at the Tuesday night. So we cut those checks on Friday. We gave them to Craig, so we're all caught up through the first 3 months. And so we don't have a problem right now. We should be fine for the next few months, and then we'll roll into the bans.
Okay. And the cash flows have been helpful, Malcolm. What was coming from the school department in terms of...
Yes, it helps, and we're hopefully going to get an updated one, and we'll sit down. Like I said, tomorrow we're meeting with the mayor for about a half an hour, and then I'm meeting one afterwards to kind of get a big picture of, what exactly we're looking at. Because a year ago, 6 months ago, we were talking about maybe just doing 2 big bonds, and so we keep tweaking it. It depends on the interest rate you're going to get, so bands or bonds or how many. But we're working on it, and we're meeting every month with the school to get an update. So
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. But don't go anywhere. I notice you're on a docket for a couple other items, so unless somebody has any questions for him at this point in time, you have a question. Oh, stick around, Malcolm. You're on for the next time as well.
The next is monthly finance report, and, he's also here for budget format discussion.
Yeah. You want to just group?
Yeah, I think these are basically interchangeable, don't you, Councilman Morado?
Yeah,
I think
but
probably.
I just want an update. I understand, just for the public to know, from our last one of our council meetings where we discussed the budget format to make it understandable for everyone to know what's going on in the budget. I understand that the city is looking into different models, one being the same as Middletown.
yes.
So I just want to know, I just want to let you know that I'm happy that we're moving in that direction, and we need that in order to know exactly where our money's going. So that's all I have to say about that, on that subject.
And if I may, I think, actually, this would be fairly quick. I spoke with Mayor De Silva, Malcolm, and he actually suggested that we could get together kind of on a biweekly basis and go through this sort of line by line, so we're not, hijacking a meeting with, our budget and finance talk. I thought that might be a good way to kind of at least get the details started, get the conversation started. And then, I'm happy to bring back anything to the council that we, kind of find out and talk about. In going through the report, and I love the report. I think the report is, for me, it's detailed, right? So it's difficult to get through, but it lays out everything that I think we need to know as a council. Kind of, and I'm not asking you to have these answers tonight. I think there's a couple of things that we probably want to look at as we're getting into, we're about 5 months, we're almost halfway into the budget year now. Mm-hmm. We have to start thinking about what we're going to do for next year. We have the added complexity of, the mayor submitting the budget to the council for approval. I believe the charter says that's 45 days prior to the end of the fiscal year.
That is correct.
So that's not going to leave us with a lot of time, really. I know, a month and a half sounds like a lot, but that's like a couple of meetings. And then there are additional timelines and deadlines in there that we're going to need to meet and be ready to have, good productive discussion. A couple of lines that I'm just looking at, Malcolm, that, I want the council to be aware of and maybe pay attention to. The line for the city manager,
I know it's not a whole lot of money that we've got lined up under there, but I'm kind of hard pressed to figure out what we budgeted under city manager. And I do know it's running. I can see it's running ahead of what over budget.
And on that one, I actually looked at that one.
Oh, okay.
And it's mainly salaries, and I think it's just when we switched over, the way the pay cycle started, that it hit the mayor's or the manager's budget, and it really should hit the mayor's.
Okay.
Because if you look at it, it's $11,000 over budget, and we only budgeted 2 or 3 months there.
Okay. So, I mean, that makes sense, I guess,
Right.
we don't see anything encumbered in there, so it's a matter of, it's an accounting thing. Okay. And then the other one I'm looking at is, human resources, which looks like it's significantly over budget when you add expended and encumbered. And I don't know if you know what's going on there.
Is that the one that looks like it's overspent $100,000 or hundreds or
It
400?
looks like it's actually 436, 295, 49 on a 559, 545 budget. It's line 400.
Yeah, and at the last time we presented this, what I was requesting is that this should come to you for the second meeting of the month, because I don't have any time to go through this and make those adjustments. We went through this last time. It's the way it works right now is when HR puts in the purchase order for health insurance, it's $700,000, and it hits their budget, and then we have to go in and allocate it to all the individual departments. So once we make the allocation, then it's spread throughout the city where it belongs. So you'll see they could have a few $100,000 surplus, it looks like, or they could be over budget 300 or 400, depending on how that 700 hits.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, and I track, and I love the percentages here because, you can see, if we figure February is approximately 33% of the way through the fiscal year, we're approximately on track against that 33%. So I think that that's a good kind of...
You just got to remember the encumbrances, because if you look at rubbish, we put the purchase order in for the whole year. So it looks like, we're almost overspent already, but that's because we have a 12-month PO in there instead of putting them in month by month.
Yeah, we had similar issues on the school side for materials. Insurance was another one.
Yes.
The trust, Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, if it's all right with the council, I'd like to take up, the mayor and his offer and, take the opportunity to, meet with Malcolm, meet with the mayor, kind of get a better feel for the budget. I mean, at least for me, I'm moving from one set of numbers to another, so there's different things to be thinking about. And I know we had talked about, the possibility for a budget subcommittee. I'd like to really kind of understand this first before I shoot off along those lines. So I know that's just what I wanted folks to be aware of.
Any other further discussion at this time?
I'm fine, completely fine with that. Numbers is not my expertise by any means, so.
Very good.
But Malcolm, just one more question. So if whatever format we decide to go with the finance department or the mayor, does it look like it may be possible to implement that this year, or how does that look?
That's the plan at the moment.
Okay.
Now, we've looked at a few, and there's a couple things we could do. I was noticed recently that the software we currently have is no longer going to be supported next June, so that puts another wrinkle in it. But what we're looking at is something that would be more of a citywide, that would sit on top of the other softwares that we have, and it would pull from each one of those. One of the unique features I saw that I liked, that doesn't pertain to my area, but it pulled up the map of the city, and you had little dollar signs throughout the city, which those are building permits, and you clicked on it, and it would tell you what the building permit was and where it was at. So and when you looked at it, the bigger the circle, the bigger the dollar amount. So it was kind of neat to see, where's the construction going on? And I mean, you can get to that kind of detail. So it could pull in police and fire and building permits and city clerk and finance. And I think that's what the mayor was looking at, and so are you, as something that would be more of a global transparency, so you can get a better look overall of what's going on throughout the city.
Was the software that's sunsetting, is that SunGuard?
Yes.
Okay. And when that's done, I mean, I'll go out in the back and bury that with you if you. that definitely needs to go.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. That takes care of E, F, and G line items, actually, so we can move right on to H at this point.
Council rules and regulations. Councilman Brito.
It's been on the docket, as we all know, for the last few meetings, so if we can just conclude this evening and wrap it up. Just the one open item that we have discussed in the past, communications and how we want to proceed and go forward with it, or more importantly, just keep it the way it is at this point in time. So whatever pleases the council, I'll be satisfied with.
I don't know, Mr. President. Once you have something really drastic, and I appreciate your work on this, and I'm open to your changes. But we were stuck a little bit on the communications bit. I mean, it seems to be working so far.
Okay.
Out of the gate, why ask for trouble and cloud the issue? I think your changes to date clean up what we needed to do, and I would say, keep communications in the two formats that we have, and we can always change it.
Okay. Does anyone have any objections to keeping communications the way it is at this point in time, and just proceeding? No? Okay, so we'll close this out. It will not be on the next docket meeting, and we'll keep it as is. Moving right along to item number I.
Mr. President, we'll put on the agenda for approval of the final resolution of the rules.
Yes, overall. Thank you. Next item, please.
City Sergeant discussion. Council Vice President Rodrick.
Mr. President, we've had a city sergeant at council meetings since incorporation in 1958, and I think this goes back to our earlier discussion of some cloudiness when the recent Charter Commission transformed the city into the mayoral form of government. And I've talked to the mayor about this, and it's been unclear as to what are we doing about that position. So I have talked with Solicitor Marcello, and we're going to work on a resolution that will put it in writing. If I'm not mistaken, there's nothing anywhere in writing from before, now, at any point. So we need to do that. I mean, the sergeants used to serve in concurrent terms with the city council, and it would change. But there is no language anywhere, and I'm not blaming the Charter Commission. I think, they couldn't think of every little thing, and that was just something that isn't clear. There has been a gentleman who's been doing it for years, certainly in good standing. I think in this day and age of security concerns, whether it's schools or municipal buildings, we do need to have some kind of authority at public meetings, if nothing else, to keep an eye on things. And, of course, the sergeant has other duties and with communications. And so what I would like to do is when the solicitor and myself draft a resolution, we'll get it on the next docket, hopefully, or subsequent docket, and take it from there and see what the mayor has indicated and some of his staff, that because it's such a council-heavy function, probably should be a council resolution to the matter. It's the city sergeant really doesn't do anything other than come to the council meetings, as far as I know. But again, there's nothing in writing anywhere. So that would be my suggestion tonight, that when Solicitor Marcello works on a draft with myself, that we'll bring that forth and go from there. So there would not be a motion tonight to appoint anybody.
Thank you, Councilman. Next item, please.
Riverside Rec Field, East Providence, Junior Town East Parking Lot Project. Councilman Cahoon.
So, for those of you who aren't familiar with the East Providence Junior Townies, that's our football little league, if you will, for the city of East Providence. Several different age groups. They go from real young kids playing flag football, moving into tackle, all the way up to 14U, I believe, is the oldest age group. And during the months from July through basically the beginning of October, they hold all of their practices at the Riverside Recreational Field. For those of you who aren't exactly sure where that is, that's that big rectangular field that's located directly behind Riverside Middle School. And as you can imagine,
being hundreds of kids there and parents dropping them off and lots of coaches and everything that comes along with tackle football, there's not a whole lot of room to park. So a few years ago, the junior townies actually reached out to the school committee and asked for if the school committee would consider maybe giving back that land of, that's just trees between the middle school and the rec to the city, and then perhaps the city would allow the junior townies to develop that with a parking lot, whatever. School committee did that. City council actually voted to go ahead and move on with that project to the point where the city had actually gone out for an RFP to get it paved. Additionally, there were some quotes that came in. There was an additional vote that took place. I can't remember if it was the last council or within the last year, 2 councils ago, that actually voted to increase the amount of funding that would be associated with that effort. Then it's a substantial amount of funding. So the president or commissioner, league commissioner Steve Duarte, reached out to me because I do coach in the league. And asked if I could find out what was going on with this because nothing really ever happened with it. And I spoke with the mayor today as well. So basically I'm going to put Steve and the mayor together so they can talk about how best to utilize that funding that was allocated, make the best use of the space. Perhaps it's not necessarily parking, but just wanted to let folks know, since they did reach out to me, and since this is something that the council in the past has voted to do, I wanted to give the council an update. So there it is.
Mr. President, I want to thank Councilman Cahoon for the update. I would add to that it's very important, I think, to that neighborhood as well. I've also been there through the years going to games and practices, and parking is at a premium, and of course we need field space. You talked about it being a football situation. You do realize the mayor's going to throw some soccer talk in there.
Sure.
So be prepared for that. But other than that, I think that's a great report, and hopefully we can get this moving.
Thank you, Councilman. That concludes council member section of the docket. And moving right on to new business, please.
New business, reports of other city officials, claims committee report, solicitor Michael Marcello.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Members of the council, as you know, the council met in executive session today at 6:30 p.m. Previous to this start of the open session. At that time, we considered a number of claims. The first 2 claims in the docket, Denise Cuthill and Matthew Silva, were tabled by unanimous vote for further information. Beginning with the claim of J.J. Cardoza, Inc., in the amount of $3,435 for property damage as a result of a collision with a fire truck and some fence and shrubbery, that the claim was referred to the Rhode Island Interlocal Trust unanimously by the City Council. The second claim by Mr. Timothy J. Connolly was a claim for reimbursement for towing expenses as a result of an automobile accident. The claim was for $450. And by unanimous vote of the council, the claim was denied. The claim of Mark McKitchen is a claim for property damage in the amount of $5,621 as a result of a accident with a city snowplow. Because of the amount of the claim, it was unanimously voted to refer that claim to the Rhode Island Interlocal Trust. The next claim is a claim from Joel Salcido. It's a claim for property damage as a result of striking a pothole on Campbell Avenue. The original claim was for $637.17. The council, on a unanimous vote, approved the claim up to the statutory amount of $300. Claims that were held over from the last session, there's a claim of Heather Gardner related to a damage to a vinyl fence, which the claimant alleged was damaged by a plowing operations of the city of Woonsocket. The claim was for $189.52, and by unanimous vote of the City Council, the claim was denied. Next claim was a claim of Darren Lopes. His claim for reimbursement for expenses incurred as a result of a sewer block caused by roots in the sewer main. The claim was approved by the amount. The claim was unanimously approved by the City Council Claims Committee on for $550. Lastly, were sewer charge abatements. First abatements for Joseph and Luann Clifford. The claim was for $2,965.31. After discussion and further investigation, the claim was approved for $1,500 by unanimous vote of the City Council. The request for a sewer abatement in the amount of $32.22 by Ms. Gail Hogue was approved by unanimous vote of the City Council. Request for sewer charge abatement in the amount of $174.90 by Mr. Gary McLean for property located at 994 Willett Avenue. That claim was denied by unanimous vote of the City Council. Claim for Alfred C. Mello of 106 Bradford Avenue for a sewer abatement in the amount of $262.32. That motion, that claim was denied by unanimous vote of the City Council. Claim of Elizabeth R. Platt for the amount of $16.38 for a sewer abatement for property located at 101 Thurston Street was approved by the City Council by a unanimous vote. And lastly, the claim of Mr. Joseph P. Souza for a sewer abatement in the amount of $86.35 for property located at 33 Redland Avenue was denied by unanimous vote of the City Council. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. City Solicitor. Would anyone like to make a motion to accept the City Solicitor's report?
So moved.
Anyone like to second?
Second it.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councilman Cahoon, seconded by Councilman Morado. A roll call vote, please.
Yes. Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Next item, please.
Resolutions. Resolution creating safer driving conditions for mobile Little League patrons, and the full resolution is attached in the docket.
I'll read this. So this resolution, it's regarding the Little League field on Wampanoag Trail, sometimes referred to as the Expressway, due to the fact that no one does the speed limit. And the idea is, I'll read the resolution and I'll explain it. So, due to the current state of the roads on Route 114 adjacent to Mobile Little League Field, creates unsafe parking and driving conditions for patrons, and whereas the current state of the road has created concerns for merging safely with traffic, and whereas the Rhode Island Department of Transportation has completed a study stating that the complexity of creating a safer road along 114 could not be remedied for several years, and whereas due to the Mobile Little League Field hosts hundreds of families and children for several months during the year, now therefore to be resolved that the City Council of the City of East Providence urges the Rhode Island General Assembly to support a turning lane into the Mobile Little League Field on 114 and a merge lane into traffic when leaving the field on 114, creating safer conditions for both drivers and pedestrians. The City of East Providence hereby requests that the city clerk send a copy of this resolution to senators and representatives of the City of Rhode Island, City of East Providence, legislative delegation of the House Representatives of the State of Rhode Island, State Senate. So basically, the issue is if anyone has been or driven by that Little League field on 114 when there's games in session, if you're familiar with 114, you turn onto any one of those side streets, whether it be President's Ave or Argyle or just the field itself, everyone has a right to stop in the lane of travel and make that right, which why people do that, I have no idea. But it is their right. What 90% of people do, including myself, is we pull into the breakdown lane. Although we do have that right, I don't feel like I should get rear-ended and getting possibly injured or killed. So the idea is to create a turn lane where parents, when they turn into that Little League field, there's a safe place for them to pull over and then pull into that park. And in addition to that, which I think it's a little bit more urgent, is when they pull out of the park. I hate to see the day when someone gets broadsided by a speeding vehicle. So the idea to create a merge lane, it's basically to have vehicles safely pull out and merge into traffic. And the idea of this resolution is basically just requesting that the state look into this and try to expedite that a little bit quicker. That's the idea for the resolution.
Thank you, Councilman Morado, for bringing this up. I think it's a great safety point that, for the community in that area. Now, were you thinking also to just broaden on that, maybe some of the other streets? Because as you say, them turning and stopping short becomes a hazard. Maybe going, as a whole, they can look at that whole area and all those side streets that you would come upon, that they might be lanes that they could merge into individually?
Well, I didn't want to overwhelm the state.
No, but I mean,
So-
if they're going to come up with a comprehensive
Correct.
plan, it might be, in the best interest to do something in a broader.
Correct. So
scope.
yes, that's my intentions down the road. And even to include, we need to also look into that bus stop. Okay, that bus stop is also an issue, and how people cross 114, and it's a necessary bus stop too. A lot of people use that. So my idea was basically to take care of this problem first, and then hopefully down the road, continue on to those other side streets. But being that if you go to Little League opening day, I cringe sometimes. There's vehicles parked everywhere, including on 114. And it was also my other hope that maybe Mobile I think Mobile gave us that land or let us use that land. I think it belongs to Mobile.
Lease it for like $1 a year.
Maybe opening up a little bit more of that to accommodate those vehicles that do park on 114 on opening day and taking them off the road. I would love to see that. But we have to contact the proper people, and I'm currently working on that. It's just a matter of time and who to contact.
President,
Please.
I can add to that. I think we've all been there many times. I've been there since the 80s coaching and right up through last year, and if not coaching or umpiring or watching games, it is extremely hazardous, dangerous. I know people that will drive all the way to the Wampanoag Trail by the Cumberland Farms and go right and then go that way because they don't want to have to drive almost through Barrington to make the turnaround. There are a lot of issues there. I support this strongly. Through the years, there have been accidents. There were a couple of deaths. Not turning into the field, but a couple of the roads down. You may recall where there was a former school principal in a bad accident, lost his life there, and someone else. However, there's also an additional solution, which I think would be even better, but working together. And we just can't get Mobile to move on it. And if we have anybody here who you say you may have somebody you're speaking to, and maybe we can ask the mayor about this too, and that is the entrance from Forbes Street would immediately solve the problem. And there's actually a road there, and it's fenced, and it would just be a matter of cutting some brush and trees, and I know the issue. Mobile doesn't want a lot of encroachment there. Former oil tank farm and a lot of issues. I understand all that. Some common sense, we should be able to work on waivers and get rid of that. We just want to make a road and fence it off. And this is mostly Riverside residents, because it's Riverside Little League. So you come down Forbes Street, you turn right into the field. You don't even go on 114. You're not even on the trail. And there also would be room to add a couple more fields. So maybe we can start a new conversation with Mobile. They're not really using that land. It's sitting there.
Yeah, if that's possible, I think that would be a great idea, and that would solve that problem with having to do turn lanes and merge lanes. And then down the road, maybe we can look to, as Councilman Souza said, for the other streets.
Yeah, Strell Drive, all of those streets are in the same boat.
Correct.
As the field. It's very, very hazardous trying to get out of there and trying to get into that field. And there are kids walking on the trail, riding bicycles. I'm surprised it's been going on, this long.
But for the time being, if we could request that we have to pass this, correct? Take a vote
It'll
on
be a
it.
good start. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be a good start to get this going. The process is going to take several years, from what I understand, and I will look into that possibility. Maybe work with, the senator representing that area, Billy Connolly, or someone that would be willing to help. So,
So this requires a motion.
Yes.
I would so move approval of this initial resolution.
And I'll
Okay.
second that.
All right. Madam Clerk, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. That concludes new businesses. Moving right ahead to public hearings, ordinances, first passage.
An ordinance, an amendment of Chapter 8 of the revised ordinances of the City of East Providence, Rhode Island, 1998, as amended, entitled Licenses and Business Regulations. The full ordinance is attached in your docket. Councilwoman Souza.
So this is an ordinance that has come up in the last session in front of the council. It's had multiple amendments to it. We had found out there were different things that needed to be fixed in the whole ordinance itself. So it made its first passage, but subsequently, because of the budget season, it didn't come to second passage. So bringing it back to the current council for discussion and then anticipating a vote. At the current, the way the current ordinance is written, as I was reviewing it earlier today, I noticed this is not the right ordinance. That was, and particularly times at the bottom in Section C, regarding the bowling alleys. This was an older version, not the updated version. So there's language in here that isn't for passage today anyways. So I'm going to meet with the city solicitor, and we're going to get the right one, which I do have, and bring it forward for the next council meeting. But I did want to have a discussion because I think it's very important to discuss this amongst many other things in our charter for the better and growth of our city. So one of the reasons, like I mentioned before, that I brought this to the table was because I think that it's very important for the betterment of our city and our economical growth is to go with changes and see what benefits the city as a whole moving forward, especially with upcoming developments throughout the city. The waterfront, vacant properties. One of the first things people look at when they're looking at a city to invest in, to develop, is what are the ordinances, what are the zoning issues, how can I work with the community to maybe fit my idea into the city if that's something that the city's looking to bring into their community. So most of our ordinances are from 1987, so you can imagine the differences from then to now and where we have to grow, and so making amendment changes is important. I do acknowledge and I appreciate other businesses having concerns of competitors coming in and influencing their business, and by no means, I've said this multiple times, am I looking to put harm on any one particular business or company or entity. My purpose is to better the community, to better businesses, to grow business in the community. So I'm certainly not pinpointing one company over another, one chain over a mom and pop at all. That is fundamentally not in my realm of thinking. My realm of thinking is to make things better for our community. Multiple companies or businesses like the one that came up today, so one is not in favor of extending hours for their business, and that's fine. That's a personal business choice. But there are other businesses in the city, and not specifically laundromats, other restaurants or eateries or just general businesses that want to have the ability to extend their hours. And I think it's incumbent upon the city, if it is within our right or we choose to allow them to do that if that's their business model. One of the things in particular that I think about is down on Newport Ave, that development that the Capiano brothers invested in. So they came before the council because that's a kind of like a blank slate for them to do work, to redevelop. They don't know, or they can't even anticipate what might come into that area. So they asked for the council to please zone it for every and anything possible so that they're not limited in their ability to develop. And that makes sense because we don't want to hinder potential development in the city. It still has to come to the council. It still has to go through a vetting process. So just because it's in place does not mean that it's a sealed stamp that it's going forward. Same idea with this. So if that area decides that somebody wants to come in and open a veterinarian, that they stay open all night like they have in Mass, like they have in East Greenwich, this gives that ability to do so. An urgent care, currently East Providence doesn't have an urgent care that is 24 hours. This ordinance would allow somebody to apply for that extended licensing. We do have a lot of medical facilities in East Providence. They seem to be growing more and more because we are desirable to where Brown campus is and the neighboring trauma hospital in Providence. So this is in no way for any laundromat to be pushed out or any other small mom and pops to be pushed out. This is in an effort to give the availability at the council's discretion to provide the community with services that they might not already have in place because our ordinances aren't equipped to provide that. So I don't know how the rest of the council feels. That is really where this ordinance in general is coming from.
Well, I think I stated how I feel about this ordinance last council, the previous 2 meetings ago when it was up for a license, and back in September as well when it came before the council with respect to approving this ordinance. I don't have an issue with business coming to the city and businesses growing. And I have an issue with businesses being open all night. I don't want to become a 24-hour city business here. I think going forward for this city, we've made some tremendous amount of leeway over the years as far as, the controls that we have. And I don't mean controls in the sense that we have our thumb over certain businesses. But when you're introducing an ordinance for 24 hours, to me, I think it creates an issue or a problem somewhere down the road. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be today. It doesn't necessarily mean tomorrow. But next year, the year after, there are going to be some concerns. And I'll give a perfect example right on Newport Avenue, as you mentioned, Newport Avenue. Uncle Tony's Pizza, prior to it moving into the location that it had. Great facilities, nice restaurant there. However, I used to get a lot of calls about the cars that were parked in the residential areas. And with that being said, it's the patrons, not the actual business itself, but when patrons leave that establishment, they have a tendency of standing outside in front of their car or meeting someone and talking or throwing out trash in somebody else's property. So I received those calls. And we're talking about Uncle Tony's Pizza. Now, I can only imagine if we expanded upon to restaurants, other restaurants and bars, what it's going to be like going forward. I see us heading, and we've talked about this many and multiple times, about heading into or reestablishing ourselves as the all-American city. But by opening 24 hours, I think that's going to set us back a little further than we anticipate at this point in time. And I think that only because it's going to create and it's going to open a lot of doors for issues and problems. East Bay Tavern, if I'm not mistaken, East Bay Tavern, FOP, is it? Right over by the... It used to be over there, over on Lyon Avenue. I mean, it's a perfect example of what happened over there, what used to happen. It got to the point that the city council with the license had to step in. Although we shut the license down for a short period of time, there were just so many incidents that were happening in this establishment in a residential area over there. It became a nuisance to the police department. And I don't want this to carry on to the other parts of the section of other parts of the city. I think that once we start opening those doors of having 24-hour businesses, and regardless, if a business, to me, if that's your model, 24 hours, then this isn't the city for you, because it just creates a lot of havoc in the communities, especially when a business is in a community. And I'm talking about right off of Newport Avenue, places as such. I just don't see this city going backwards and having ourselves become a 24-hour business city. Now, there was discussion last time about the licenses, about, you got, CVS and Walgreens and some of the other pharmacies. I mean, to me, that's a necessity. As a father of 4 who had, when you take your child to emergency room, you come back with a prescription, you got to wait till the following morning to fill that prescription up. I mean, that's something you need right away. So to me, that's a necessity. But to say to have, whether it's a laundromats or restaurants or bars start to open up in this city for 24 hours, I think down the road we're going to see a lot of issues and problems, primarily not so much in the establishment itself, but how it spills over into the communities. When people start parking into residential areas, because I've heard this before as well, when patrons come out of an establishment and they're talking in front of somebody's house at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, never mind 3, 4, or 5 o'clock in the morning, especially if it's a Thursday evening in the summertime as well. I just think that's going to create a problem down the road, and we're setting ourselves up for a huge disappointment with residents in the city that is just going to be, and I see that right now, not right at this moment, but I see it for some of just the smallest restaurants that close at 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning. So to go beyond that point in time, I just see it. I just see it's going to be an issue down the road. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, but 2 years from now, or even next year, you're going to see some residents complain about it.
Well, and I appreciate your opinion on the matter and some of your points. In this ordinance, it does also address businesses that were not permitted to be open 24 hours. And this is, by no means is a 24-hour permit. This is extended business hours. So you can extend your business hours till 2 in the morning, and then you close at 2 in the morning, where previously you had to close at 12. So it's not just... everybody can be open 24 hours. It's an extension of hours past what the city currently allows.
That would be, to me, that would be today. Now, what's it going to be another year from now? Well, seems to be working out 2 o'clock. Why don't we extend it to 4 o'clock? So
again,
I think
it's
a pat 2 or 24. I think it's a pat 2 24 hours that we're going to be a city that's, keeping our police department extremely active. Oh, we got a problem over here. Let the police deal with it. I just see it opens up a whole can of worms heading down the road into the summertime and just residential areas. That development, we want development to come in, and Narragansett Parkway, that new development, but I doubt that owner or that developer is going to want 24-hour businesses located in that area over there, because it's going to become a nuisance to the public at some point in time, whether it's people in the city or people coming from out of the city or people coming from other parts of the state and saying, well, let's go here in East Providence, doing whatever it is that they do, and then they take off. It's just like the problems that they had over at the FOP, the former FOP. A lot of those patrons there were not East Providence residents. The problems that we are having, so they create the problem here, and then they're off to their own city.
Just to address that, if I could, but they closed at 1 o'clock, right? So all those problems, which thankfully are gone, now there's a new place called Field House Pub, which is doing well, but they weren't 24 hours. Right?
No,
the problems were at 1 o'clock.
Right, but what I'm seeing, what I would see is a pattern. And today it's not 24 hours. Today is extended hours. But next year, it's going to be 24 hours.
If we allow it.
Well,
and anything with a license.
If we're going to allow the extended, we're going to allow the 24 hours eventually. And again, it might not be tomorrow.
If I may, if I can interject a little bit. I agree with some of the things that President Brittle said. And I can actually speak from experience, being that I am in law enforcement. And let me tell you, I can't wait for those bars to close in the community that I work at 1 o'clock in the morning. And all it takes is one brawl to tie up half of the shift, okay? And that's pretty dangerous to where I work. It's a slippery slope to have 24 hours, businesses open 24 hours, especially liquor establishments.
Never be open 24 hours.
Well, that's the slippery slope that we would be going on, because I feel that we are a responsible council right now.
Yeah.
But who knows what council will be in this place in the next term? Okay, we got to do ordinances that protect our citizens from this point to, councils down the road. So, where will it end? Yeah, we do have pharmacies that open 24 hours, and that's a necessity. We do have gas stations that open 24 hours. That's a necessity. I would even go as far as saying if someone wanted to open a veterinarian clinic, because if you have pets, they're just like family members, and something was to happen to them, that's a necessity. And even an urgent care, if we had one, that's a necessity. But to have some of these businesses open beyond, I believe it's 1 o'clock right now, correct? I just don't see a need for this. And that lady that was here for the laundromat, and one of my questions at that council meeting was, is this necessary for revenue generating? And her answer was no, it's just more of a convenience where they already have an employee, working there. So I agree. I would hate to see us be a 24-hour community, and it'll just put a burden on law enforcement and rescue personnel. Like I said, when the bars close at 1 o'clock, where I work as a law enforcement officer, sergeant, we can't wait for those bars to close when I work that shift at 1 o'clock. Actually, we wish they would close a little sooner, but that's all I have to say.
I think if I may, a couple of questions I might have, and if I understand, we're not even taking first passage on this.
No, because
right?
the word, there's inconsistencies in the verbiage.
When we come to first passage, I generally am inclined towards supporting something on first passage because that's when you can get to second passage and kind of get that public, right? I think questions that I would have about this is, I think there's probably a difference between a laundromat and a bar. I think there's probably a difference between the clientele coming out of a bar at 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning and their state of mind, as compared to people that are coming out of a laundromat maybe at 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning. So I think that's something that we probably want to consider. I think it would probably behoove us to have information about other such extended hour laundromats that we might know of. Maybe if there are police reports, maybe if there are, if there's activity, certainly that's something that would, factor into our decision. I look at the ordinance as currently written, and I understand we spoke of pharmacies, we spoke of gas stations. Those are things that you need 24 hours. I wonder how we got to bowling alleys. I don't know who bowls at 3 o'clock in the morning. Not me. I don't do my laundry at 3 o'clock in the morning either. Maybe I should. But, so, I don't want to get in the way of stopping somebody from implementing a business model that will ultimately make them successful. I think it's reasonable for us to ask these businesses why they think they will be successful, who they think they're going to reach out to, what kind of clientele they're going to be bringing in at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, if any, what procedures they might have set up, processes they might have set up for emergencies. I think we all agree that there's maybe a shadier element walking around at 2 or 3 in the morning than there is, maybe noon. I think these are the kind of questions that we probably want to tease out before we take any action on an ordinance. And I supported the license, before I knew that there was an ordinance saying no, I supported the license largely because we did it on a provisional basis. And so we could kind of watch some of that stuff and see what became of it. I think I'm looking at it from, I guess, to wrap all this up, I'm looking at it very cautiously. And again, I think, to your point, Mr. Brito, we can pull these back, right? We can pull, but then you find yourself in court battles, et cetera, a license gets, handed back to a business. So maybe there's no way to shut that door once you open it, to your point. So I think we should tread carefully, is what I'm saying. I don't know. I hear a lot of folks point to safety concerns associated with extended hours in a laundromat. I don't know of any specific issues, and I don't know that that's just because I'm ignorant or naive or not paying attention to laundromats and, after midnight. But, I mean, I would invite the community, if anybody knows of anything specific that's happened, and, especially in a similar community to ours, please let me know. I definitely want to know. You don't want to make a rash decision, so.
All
Like I
right,
said-
again, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Like I said, just my point is where does it end? And we open the door to that, which there is really it's not necessary. They're not struggling for money, and therefore that's the reason why they want to open 24. It's where do we end? And how do we, as this council or future councils, deny other businesses from wanting to open up their business for 24 hours? Nothing good happens at 3 o'clock in the morning. We all know that. Just nothing good happens. I just don't know where it's going to end, and I'm afraid of that.
Mr. President, can I ask Councilman Morado, in your experience, law enforcement, in a couple of different venues that you've been in, do you have, I think we all agree we don't want to see 24-hour bars. I know I don't.
Nor do I.
Yeah, Providence goes to 2 a.m., and other than that, everyone else is like 1 o'clock, I think, statewide.
Right.
So, and that seems pretty good. But in your areas, have you had to respond to problems at laundromats at 3 in the morning or other places? Is it mostly bars, I'm going to assume?
So we don't have laundromats in that community, but we do have. We're pretty strict in shutting down the bars at the 1 o'clock hour.
Right.
But we also have a couple of restaurants that do serve alcohol, and we have to continuously go back to those places and keep telling them you need to kick these people out, bars closed. And if not, we'll write them up, we'll do a report, and that goes up for review. But it's just wasted man hours.
They're not 24 hours.
They're not 24 hours.
Right.
It's just it just becomes wasted man hours. A perfect example of once you open that door, we started with one establishment wanting to serve alcohol on the sidewalk, okay? And now we're at everyone wants to serve alcohol at every event, including open, town spaces, the town common, the parks. It just opened the door for everybody. And now it becomes a problem for us because now we have to, have police monitor, making sure that children aren't being served. And it just becomes a headache. And that all started from one business innocently. People already eat out here anyways. Why not? Why can't we serve alcohol? And from there, it just mushroomed into this. Everyone wants to serve alcohol at every event, public event, and so on and so forth. It just becomes a problem.
Well, would you agree that's the major concern, events with alcohol or restaurants or bars? Not so much, and I don't know who would want to go to a grocery store at 3 in the morning, but those wouldn't be the problems you're talking about.
But my question is, once you open that door to one establishment, how can you deny any other establishment? How do you deny another business owner from wanting to do the same? That's where the problem lies.
Because that's our right as a council to not give a license for a liquor to be past a certain hour.
But who's to say
But
that
if a diner wants to be open to serve clientele at 2 in the morning, breakfast food, they should be able to do so if that's what they choose.
So-
If McDonald's wants to stay open, instead of going to Seekonk, maybe the McDonald's in East Providence wants to stay open, they can do so. I think some of the mentality that I hear from, our council president is the same when Cumberland Farms wanted to come in, and it was no, pushback. Cumberland Farms is a great addition to the community. It is also a 24-hour establishment, and it's not thinking so visionary. You have to think forward. I know we have to be cautious with things, but that's what we're elected to do. We're elected to go on a case-by-case, it's license-by-license basis. It's not a stamp one for all. It all comes and we evaluate, and we can put people, as Councilman Cahoon said, on a probationary period to see if there is some incidences where there have been problems, then you revoke those. And, that's our job as legislators and as council people to keep make sure that things are being watched and that people are doing things in accordance to the charter. And as far, and I don't mean to be offensive, but regarding the police are 24-hour protective service. So police during the day are very busy with things during the day, and police at the overnight should also be out there monitoring things and not parked in a parking lot. They should be going around to these things that are open and making sure that the community is safe. I mean, I think that's what their job is, right? It's not to think, well, it's 1 o'clock, I hope everybody gets out because I want to, take a break. I mean, that's...
But the issues on a day shift is completely different from the issues on a night shift.
Right.
In all my years, 18 years of law enforcement, I have not yet done a DUI arrest on day shift. It's
Well,
just
we
the
had one
nature.
during the day.
Those are rare, and
This week.
that's just the nature of the beast. You have people that go out and drink in
Right.
the night hours, and that's where we have problems. The Cumberland Farms, again, is a gas station.
break out in Cumberland Farms,
It
too.
could, but there's nothing there
You
to...
can't control people's behavior.
It's not a hangout. It's not a hangout, but
People do
it's still a necessity.
People
It's still
do
a
riot.
necessity where they serve gas. That's just my opinion. That's why we shouldn't be a 24-hour city.
But the issue with the Cumberland Farms wasn't the residents. The residents welcomed the Cumberland Farms. The issue became with the zoning board. So the residents wanted Cumberland Farms. The only
I'm talking
problem
about
was...
the community in a whole, the city in a whole, as a whole, the entity of the city, not pushing forward.
Well, Mr. President.
Well, I don't think by any means. I think the city continues to push forward. We continue to develop throughout the city. We're developing more throughout the city than we've ever developed, whether it's, at the waterfront or otherwise. We just talked about the development over in Ward 1, Gianova. There's another development that's going to be going on there. The development is going. The development's going to happen. If people don't want to come, if businesses don't want to come to the city, it's certainly not going to be for 24 hours. I think it's going to be for what other reason it may be, but I don't think it's going to be for the fact that, we can't get an open license for 24 hours, or therefore we're not going to go to the city.
I think you're missing the point. You're fixed on 24 hours. It's an extension of hours.
Right.
So
I'm fixed on 24 hours because, like I said earlier, today's an extension of hours. 2 years from now or a year from now, it's 24 hours. And by the end of this term, we're going to be scratching our heads saying, boy, how did we become a 24-hour city? I mean, when and where, how did all this happen all of a sudden? And then when we get bombarded with all these phone calls with patrons, as I indicated earlier, because I've seen it now, and I can only imagine what extended hours are going to do. I just think it's going to become more of a nuisance than anything, and that's just my own.
So like I
personal
mentioned
opinion.
again in the beginning of this discussion, this ordinance doesn't have the right language in it, so it was just a general discussion. There is language change that needs to be done anyways, so after hearing some of the concerns, obviously there's room for even more change in the ordinance. Again, this ordinance, if people haven't read the original, it doesn't even, current businesses that are operating in an extended hours didn't even have the authority under our previous ordinance to do so, because there was, so this is not just, Councilwoman Souza wants 24-hour East Providence. There are fundamental issues with that ordinance to begin with. And with respect to the bowling alley, that was because there was a bowling alley issue that was brought to my attention. It has even nothing to do with extended hours. It was a whole time issue with hours of operations that was outdated and needed to be changed. So again, there's a lot of incorrect information that the city currently doesn't practice, that doesn't match up with the charter in general. So that's what initially started this whole amendment before anybody came up for licenses. That's what it initially.
Mr. President, can I ask Councilwoman, if we did nothing, we left status quo, businesses can still come forward and request extended hours, or they're not allowed to at all?
Only taverns and pharmacies and victualating houses, that's it.
Just those?
So currently, other operating, like gas stations and such, that are operating at extended hours, they're not licensed to do so.
So taverns could, which
But
involves...
we don't have any taverns.
We don't have any, but
We found out.
alcohol venues could.
Correct. They already were,
They already can.
as of 1987, when this was originally adopted, yes, they could have, up until 4 a.m. Correct.
The
So,
only-
no change.
Sorry. The only thing I would add to that is that usually the hours of operations of a bar or a speakeasy, whatever you want to call it, are controlled by controlled by state law and by the local ordinance, so you can set your time frame within that.
Those are in the northern part of the state, Mr. Massey. Speakeasies.
Sorry.
Madam Clerk?
In regards to it's just something I wanted to add to that as well, is we discovered that taverns actually don't exist in East Providence in theory or in licensing theory. We don't have taverns, we have saloons, believe it or not. So
What's the difference?
So the saloon-
One
the-
requires spurs and the other one does not.
Housing, taverns provide
you, Mr.
housing
Moreno.
for patrons. That's the difference.
What was it? I'm sorry.
Housing, taverns provide housing.
So
A bedroom to sleep or rent.
So the saloons that we have for licensing through the clerk's office are actually, they don't offer food, it's just the alcohol.
Oxford Taverners?
They're called salons.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna be-
Just so we know, for the language, we'll include, maybe we should consider including saloons, but in that reference, saloons, there are actually 3 that are licensed in our city.
Well,
Yeah, I think my concern is when you start messing with an ordinance, right, you open the door up for a smart attorney who's operating on behalf of a client to do things that you did not intend with the ordinance, and there are lots of smart attorneys. So I think it behooves us to be very careful with the ordinance and our wording and what we choose. And, when we say things like and such other businesses as may be approved by the city council, I think you do, to Mr. Morano's point, you do open yourself up to that fairness claim of, okay, well, why would you allow this business and not allow me? And at which point are you taking part in a discriminatory action rather than, making a decision that's in accordance with law? And that's my concern, is putting ourselves in a position where we're vulnerable to somebody who's smart with words and understands precedents, and then we've got all sorts of unintended consequences. Right?
Well, the councilwoman did say she's going to revisit this. So with
Because this
that,
wasn't the one that
okay.
should have been.
So with that being said,
Move
if
to
we have any,
table.
we'll move to table this discussion.
Thank you. And I appreciate everybody's insight and ideas and concerns, and they're well noted, and I do agree with some of them, too.
I'll second the motion to table, or we don't need it.
We don't need it.
No.
No. All right. Any other further questions or comments while we're up here?
Just because it was down for first reading, can we actually table it and have a vote on table, and that will allow us to come back to
Sure.
the first reading when we have.
So I will second that.
Okay. Well, who made the motion?
Councilwoman.
Councilwoman Susan.
Oh, okay. All right, so we have a motion to table discuss and seconded by Councilman Rodrick. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. It appears now the next item is to adjourn.
May I make one quick announcement?
Please do.
This is just, for the public at large. I'd like to say thank you to everybody who did a great job shoveling their sidewalk in front of their residence or establishment, especially for those of you who live or operate businesses along a path where kids typically walk to school. It's great to not have kids walking in the street, especially on Pawtucket Avenue or Broadway or Warren Avenue, et cetera, et cetera. For those of you who maybe didn't do such a good job, I'd kind of like to know why. If there's something that's preventing you as a homeowner or a business owner from shoveling your sidewalk, which is kind of your civic duty, let me know. I know we have folks that might not be able to shovel, especially when it's a lot and it's heavy. I kind of feel like there's something that the city can do about that. Certainly something I'd want to entertain, but not doing anything and having kids walk in busy streets is really not a good option. So anyway, let me hear it. I'm interested.
Thank you, Councilman. And with that being said, don't forget this weekend, Sunday, to turn the clocks ahead, believe it or not. If there's no further discussion at this point in time, would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
Have a motion to adjourn, seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
And Council President Brito.
Aye. Thank you.